Welcome to Figure Eight, where we feature inspiring stories of women entrepreneurs who have grown their businesses to 7 and 8 figures revenue. If you're in the mix of growing a bigger business, these stories are for you. Join us as we explore where the tough spots are, how to overcome them, and how to prepare yourself for the next portion of the climb. I'm your host, Julie Ellis. I'm an author, entrepreneur, and a growth and leadership coach who co-founded, grew, and exited an 8-figure business. This led me to exploring why some women achieve great things. And that led to my book, Big Gorgeous Goals. Let's explore the systems, processes, and people that help us grow our businesses to new heights. If you're interested in growing your business, this podcast will help. Now, let's get going. Hello and welcome to this episode of Figure Eight. Today, I am chatting with Aeryon Ashlie. She's an acclaimed holistic nutritionist, keynote speaker, #1 best-selling author, and is known as the visionary force behind Aeryon Wellness Supplements. As a founder, she has championed holistic health for women from diverse backgrounds for nearly 2 decades. And I am so excited to dig into this work of this trailblazer today. And welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me today. This is wonderful. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, I am too. Now, I know when we chatted before, we talked about why it's so important for products to have what is commonly called an NPN, which
Mm,
means they are certified by Health Canada. And with
yes.
the advent of selling on Instagram and all the things that come into our feeds, we're not always buying the best quality products. So tell me about why you're so passionate about that.
Well, I mean, for one, because I'm very passionate about supporting Canada and buying Canadian now more than ever, and I've always been touting this for quite some time now. But one of the big things with Canada, we have regulation, which I want regulation in our natural health industry. For us to bring a product to market, we have to have, as you mentioned, an NPN, which is a natural product number. So what this basically means is we submit all the certificate of analysis of every single product, every single ingredient in that product, and the claims we want to make. We have to show that the dosages we are using are the clinical doses used in studies to get that claim. So we can't just put a sprinkle and say, oh, it's going to help with estrogen metabolism or weight loss. We actually have the clinical dose in order to validate that. And so then you send that off to Health Canada and they look into it. And there's different classes. There's a class 1, class 2, class 3, and they tend to, class 3 be more difficult. And in that, then they would provide you with a license. And that usually takes up to a year to get, sometimes even longer. So you're waiting for this to happen. You hire somebody who's an NPN expert. So there's a lot of work that goes into play to bringing a product to market. And so in that, the frustration I have is every product in Canada on the shelves that you see in your natural health store will have an NPN right on the front. But when we have companies from the US that are selling on Meta or advertising on Instagram and Facebook, they don't have to have this NPN. So they're able to make really outlandish claims. One of the companies I see on a regular basis, claims you lose 14 pounds in a week, which we know is ridiculous. And so in that, we can't make those claims in Canada because that is not scientifically proven, right? So on Meta, they're allowed to do this and sell into Canada, and people can buy personal supply across the border. But there's a real disservice not only to the vendors like myself who are doing the work that is required from Health Canada, but also to our natural health retailer because they can't carry these products that don't have an NPN. They're claiming these claims. So then it takes away from supporting the people who work in our country, right? And so that's what really riles me. And I've talked to CHFA, which is our governing body, about having a conversation with Health Canada. Hopefully, eventually, we can have this where, with Meta, the same way that we can't watch the news. It should be if you want to advertise into Canada, you have to provide an NPN. So we have Amazon.ca. Everything on Amazon.ca, for the most part, should have an NPN, and they're pretty label compliant on Amazon.ca. Amazon.com is the States, right? So that's why it's harder for us to order through the States. You usually have the PO box somewhere down south. But that's really where my passion lies in that, because it's about supporting the economy and supporting our economy and also supporting the people who are doing the work properly and following the regulation that we need to do. And then also the consumer on their end knows that what they're buying is not just smoke and mirrors. It's not just fluff. There's no proprietary blends. If you see that on one of your product, it's not a Canadian product because you cannot have that on there. So, for example, I'm going to call them out. A1 Greens, for example, is a proprietary blend. So you don't know the dosages that you're getting of every single ingredient. So they can have spirulina and chlorella and all these wonderful ingredients and call it a superfood, but they could just do a little sprinkle of it. Here in Canada, you're going to have the actual dosages going down that label, which is what you want to do, is looking for a product that's not proprietary blend, has an MPN, and has those dosages that are in there.
Yeah, that's interesting because the other thing that it struck me as you were speaking there is that process of obtaining that NPN and the cost associated with it in that kind of a timeline also makes it a very uneven playing field.
Very uneven. I mean, and also too, we're in cost recovery. So Health Canada is going to be putting right now, we can file for free and get an MPN. That's not going to happen after April. This is what's kind of coming down the pipeline, where we will have to pay for a class one, which a class one would be like a vitamin D, right? There's one ingredient that's a monograph. So we all kind of know, we all have the same claims we're allowed to make about vitamin D. If you look at any vitamin D across Canada, it's kind of the same, but we get our own specialized number. Class two I think it's like 2 or 3 ingredients. And then there's class three that's more comprehensive. But the fees for each of these to file are now going to start in play as well. So not only will we have to hire an NPN specialist who knows how to file the paperwork properly to Health Canada and submit in a way that we need to get our NPN, but then on top of that, we're going to be paying as well to get that NPN license. So all of a sudden, these costs are stacked on top of us. And then that's not even to mention the incurring costs and the increasing costs that are happening right now with ingredients. I mean, one of my products had a 50-cent increase overnight on each bottle. And that's due to tariffs, and that's due to all the other, and the dollar, right? Our US dollar is, the Canadian dollar is down. So this all is going to contribute to make it challenging in our industry. And so we have to be very vigilant, in making sure that at least that we're on a fair playing field and that people are really aware of NPNs and why it is so important to support Canadian companies.
Yeah. Yep. And then, yeah, you trying to figure out on that model piece of, yeah, with increasing costs that are coming, how do you still play in the marketplace and be competitive in terms of price?
Yeah, exactly. And I've been in this industry for over 20 years, and I've been in a variety of capacity, from account manager, and now I'm owner myself. And I had more in this last year, I had more natural health food stores closed down than ever before. So there is these smaller stores, the mom and pop, they can't compete against the giants, of Amazon.ca and some of these big giants that are out there. But even against, there's the grocery stores that are really beginning to get into the supplementation market as well, right? So it's even more important that we're able to support Canadian retailers, Canadian vendors, and our economy. And there's and I've actually admired that about the US, that they have a very pro-America, buy America mentality. I think that's fantastic. We've never had that before. We're kind of like, they're so cool, we want to be like them. And I think the one thing I think it's coming out of all of the stuff that's going on is that now we're like, wait a second, we need to be supporting our own here in Canada. We need to actually really start looking at where our dollar is going and what we're doing to support our own economy, instead of just buying stuff without paying attention to it.
Yeah, and I think it's also, I mean, the advantages to having a system like we do, where there is a higher level of scrutiny and expectation.
Yeah.
I mean, from a, safety, food safety system stability perspective,
Right.
that's actually a real pro for us as consumers.
100%. There is, I think, I would never buy an American supplement. I just wouldn't. I would only buy Canadian. That's all there is to it. And I go the extra mile. And even now, especially now, in the grocery store the other day, I put back so many products because I realized they were, product of the US, made in the US, shipped up to Canada. And I'm like, okay, nope, nope. And I was literally sitting, and it was funny because there was another person in the aisle, and I think they were doing the same thing. We both had our phones out, and I'm like, this is
Yeah.
great. I want this to happen. I want us to be, paying just a little bit more attention to where our dollar is going to be going. But especially my industry is supplementation, so I definitely want people to pay attention there too.
And so now take me way back and tell me how you got into the holistic health industry 20 years ago.
Yeah. So growing up, my dad was an amateur bodybuilder. My mom was a figure skating coach. So athletics and aesthetics were really important in our household. So I've always worked out. and had a passion for the gym and taking care of my body and training. And I started doing fitness competitions in my 20s. And I became a sponsored athlete for one of the big companies. And in that, I begged them for a sales job. I moved from Toronto to Calgary to take that job, tripled sales in 6 months. And then another company kind of stole me and took me back to Toronto. I worked there for a year, and then they transferred me to Vancouver. So I worked for them for over 13 years as an account manager for the interior of BC and the coast of BC. And they were a fantastic company, amazing boss. And then about 5 years ago, my boss decided to sell to Jameson Wellness. And it wasn't shortly after that I was packaged out, and I got a good chunk of money. And I knew I always wanted to do my own brand. And at the time, the only female brand in Canada also sold to Jameson. So I knew there was going to be an opportunity there to speak to women, but I wanted to do it a little differently. One of the things I don't like is this whole magic pill approach. You take this and everything's better. Because based on my own health issues, I knew that wasn't the case. So one of the things we did was we used QR codes on the front of every label, and that comes with a complete wellness program. So there's a video explaining the product, 2 meal plans, workouts, affirmations, tons of education. And that stems from our mission, we have 5 pillars, and they are the thoughts you think, the friends you keep, daily movement, nutrition, and lastly, supplementation, because supplements are there to supplement you. And you really have to put everything into a whole. There's nothing, I mean, I do have a magic pill in the sense of boric acid, which is yeast infections, and bacterial vaginosis is a vaginal suppository. That would be my magic pill. But the rest of them you have to, and even that, you want to make sure you're taking care of your gut health. But in that, it really is looking at everything as a whole and educating women in order to find sustainable health and wellness and understand that it's not just a quick fix. It takes work on all aspects. So that's kind of where I started. It's been 5 years now. We're in about 600 stores across Canada, online, and on Amazon as well, amazon.ca. And it's been an incredible journey. I travel and speak and educate women and hopefully inspire them to live a healthier and better life.
That's so exciting.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. I mean, obviously, you were in the industry and you knew a lot about it, but still, the difference of starting up your own company, getting your own formulations made, going down, deciding even what products you felt the world needed and, formulating those and actually getting them to market. Like, it's a big project.
It is a big project. I mean, I do have a fantastic formulator, so I don't formulate everything. I do have ideas a lot of the time, and I'll come like, hey, I love this product. I want to change this. I want to add this. Let's use this new ingredient. So we'll do those kind of things, kind of reinvent the wheel. But I love what I do. I know I wake up every morning and I'm so excited to take on another day and tackle my list. Sometimes my list is, 2, 3 pages long, but I'm still really excited to get to do what I do, because I know when I get these emails from women who are experiencing hormonal balance, be it in perimenopause or water retention relief or sleep from snooze, or of course, up and away with our yeast infections and bacterial vaginosis, being like, oh my gosh, it's amazing. It fixed it right away. That is reassurance that I'm definitely on the right path.
Yeah. And what was it that made you sort of focus in on women and perimenopause in particular?
I'm in perimenopause, so that's an easy one.
Personal experience? Yeah.
And what I started talking about perimenopause about a year and a half ago. And that was kind of before people really talked about perimenopause. And I mean, even when I used to do my lectures, I had it peri-menopause. And so then now it's, of course, one word. And what I knew is I had kind of gone through my own health crisis at 35. I was overtired, overworked, overstressed. I was in this industry, but I had grown up in a household where athletics and aesthetics are important. And so I was quite an overweight child. So I was always continuously trying to lose weight. If I could just lose weight, if I was just smaller, I'd be more worth it, right? Better. And that led to an eating disorder, a 25-year battle with bulimia. And in that, at 35, my adrenals were shot. My relationship with food was horrible. My relationship with movement, I'd over-exercise all the time. So I really took a step back and reevaluated what my relationship was with holistic health. And that's really what I got the 5 pillars from as well. I really worked on cognitive behavioral therapy first. What am I thinking? Because that's going to control if I'm training, if I'm eating nutritious food, if I'm having boundaries with certain individuals, right? And I worked on all those 5 pillars, and that's why they became the foundation of my company. And from that, I had started early perimenopause, and my mom had a horrible menopause. And so looking at that, I was like, wow, if I'm 35 and I'm going through this, what is menopause going to be like for me? So that's another reason why I really started digging in and taking a look at habits and lifestyle. And then from that, everything kind of, it's interesting how timelines all, and then from that, then I got packaged out after. And so it all just kind of, and I was like, okay, I want to create products on the market that not only give a message of education, but that also have clinical doses. So you're not taking 4 to 6 a day. You can take 1 to 2, right? So it's higher extracts, really great formulas and products that women can trust and get behind and know that it's a woman who has designed them and I take them all myself. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that is a foundational piece. Like, you're very committed to the product that you put out into the world, doing what you claim it does.
Yeah, exactly. Um, and thing is, I use them all, right? I mean, I think that's, something you want to really look at too, as a person using the products they're selling. But I use them all, and I use other supplements too, and I use all dualities, right? So I think that's important. Is I'm a big believer in using hormone therapy. I use hormone therapy, and I use my supplements. It's using whatever makes you feel better, and that's a big part of my messaging when I talk about perimenopause and menopause is that women need to advocate for themselves. We would not walk into a doctor 9 months pregnant and say, what am I going to do with this? You have a birth plan. The second I found out I was pregnant, I was like, oh my gosh. I had a birthing CD and I had my ball and I had pictures and I had my whole suitcase ready to go. Like I was so excited, joined moms groups and the whole thing, right? But when it comes to this important transitional time in our life, when not only that, we have so many other things going on too. Usually our kids are kind of getting ready to go to university. Maybe we're looking at our careers are high, like the highest they're at. We're looking at that partner going like, who are you? So all these things are happening. And then we hit perimenopause, right? And all of a sudden we're really thrown for a loop. And so it's so important that in our 40s, if early 40s, if we can go in and have a conversation with our doctor and say, tell me what you know about menopause. What are some of the options I have? And if that doctor gaslights you or tells you you're just getting older and it's just part of life, go find another doctor and find somebody that's going to talk to you about all of the avenues that you can pursue and that you can make an educated choice for yourself what you want to do. And that's a big passion of mine, is to hopefully provide women with the tools that they can do that.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that has been, I've seen lots of dialogue about over the last few years, is just the fact that the medical system hasn't historically been that good at helping women through perimenopause and into menopause.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's getting maybe a little better now. And then because, Generation X, we're like, I'm not taking this. I'm not just going to like feel like crap. There's no way. Right. So I think there's a little bit of that in the fact that we're like, no, we need to find a solution and we're going to speak up and we're going to say, this is not okay. And the advantage of that not only is for our own self, but also for our daughters. I have a 16-year-old. I mean, I knew my mom went through a tough menopause, but we didn't have lots of conversations about it. Michaela has sat through the M Factor when I hosted it here and listened to all the doctors speak. And she has attended my Navigating Perimenopause seminar. She understands that we both right now, her being 16 and me being 50, are both in, like I'm in second puberty and she's in first puberty. Our hormones are both doing this, right? So there's a lot of tension in our household sometimes, lots of tears, but I'm like, it's hormones, babe. It's just hormones. We're fine.
So you've actually hosted events. I mean, you talked about the seminar, and then is the M Factor a conference?
No, the M Factor was through PBS. We're actually hosting a new one in Calgary. So it's the movie from the States. And so in that, it's really discussing menopause. So we hosted one out here and we had a panel of incredible doctors. And now we're just hosting one in Calgary on March 4th. And I just literally posted it 2 days ago and we've sold out. So we're going to 200 women are coming to it. So, and it's just providing context to what's going on in your body. And then afterwards, having doctors in which they can answer to that. Because, I mean, this film talks a lot more about more HRT, and a lot of women don't want to go down that route, or MRHT. And so having me there too and talk about natural supplementation, because there are options if that's something people want to pursue. But as I said, my whole agenda is to provide women with the education they need to really understand that this time in life, your 40s and 50s, it is game time, right? If you are not taking care of yourself with nutrition and having your fiber, making sure you're having that 30 grams of protein per meal, eating it like it's your job, right? Lifting weights is the best thing you can do for yourself. When I do my seminars, I did one 2 days ago. I was in Victoria speaking at Worthy, this event. And I'm very open. I'm like, I sell supplements. I'm here. I have my brand. I'm selling supplements. But today, if you can join the gym after this and start lifting weights, that is why I'm here speaking to you. That is the best thing I can do for you, because that will change your life if you start dedicating time every day and lifting weights. Right. So yeah, that's a big part of my passion, is to educate women, inspire them to start making those habit changes now. So when they're 70, 80, they are thriving and aging with purpose and kicking ass. So yeah.
I remember someone saying to me, oh, I wish I was 50 again and I could, and I was starting another business. And then, when you're sitting there at 50 and
Yeah.
you're like, oh, I wish I was 35 again starting another business. Like we tend to not plant ourselves in bloom in the era that we're in. We wish for a bygone time. And
Yes.
it is just so interesting
Yeah.
about, the actions that you're taking today. It's so true, right? If you want to move into your, elderly years, you have to start moving now.
And it's going to come. I mean, 20 years goes by pretty fast. I
It
mean,
sure
when we think
does.
about it, and I think a lot of women can resonate with this, but I had my daughter at 35. My mom had me at 20. I get my mom for an extra 15 years of my life. Right. And so I had this kind of realization last year. I was looking at booking a trip to Italy for Michaela and I was like, oh, I don't know if I should do it. And it's expensive. And maybe I should save money this year. And I was driving back from the gym. And all of a sudden I had this realization that when Michaela's 55, so I'm 50 right now, and Michaela's 55, I'll be 90. My mom's 70, right? 70. So I get her for an extra, like, till I'm 7. I'm going to get my mom till like, mom's going to live a long life. She's taking really good care of herself. Michaela gets me to 55. Like, she's shorted 15 years of life with me. And in that, I have to be responsible because I want to be around for her. And then I started crying. I went home and booked our trip to Italy. I'm like, we're going to Italy. We need to go. And she's like, okay. I'm like, because I'm going to die when you're 55. She's like, what? I'm like, she's like, stop talking like that. I'm like, but I'm going to be here less than grandma. So it's this like, holy crap, it is time, because I want to be here for her as long as possible.
Yeah,
So
no, I
yeah.
think that's a really great point. And obviously, that is what ties together that sort of underlying theme of tying together, the wellness brand and everything that you've been building.
Yeah, exactly. It really is. It's what I think about a lot. So it's all encompassing. It's all I think about. Aeryon Wellness and taking care of health. And if I can impart that to some women, and I had a woman message me a while ago. I did a seminar, and she said, "I just want to tell you that I've been saying to myself, I need to join the gym. I need to get back to the gym, and I just haven't been doing it." And she goes, "Tonight I came and listened to you, and I've joined the gym, and I just want you to know that." And she goes, "You made a difference." And I was just like, "This is why I'm doing this."
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's true. I mean, obviously, I want you to buy my supplements too. So don't
Hmm.
just join the gym too. But in that, knowing that that's going to change her trajectory and how she's operating in the world, that is to me what it's all about.
Yeah, and this idea, I think, too, of like fitness is, yes, the lifting weights and cardiovascular health and those things, but it's also about like, can you pick something up off the floor? Can you
Yes,
get up off the floor if you fall down? Like all the
yes,
functional pieces about having
yes.
fitness and health in your life that make a big difference as you age.
After the age of 65, accidental falls are the number one death. If you are in your 70s and up, and if you fall and break a hip, 25% do not live past a year. Taking care of your bone density is incredibly important, especially for women, because as estrogen drops, that affects our bone density levels. So, in that, vitamin D is a big one we want to make sure we're taking, and having protein, make sure I have a nice, muscle skeletal frame. But jump training is a big one you can do as well. I do plyos once a week where I'm jump training, and research has now shown that doing, was it 10 to 20 jumps twice a day, increase bone density in the hips. Now, I only do once a week, so I'm jumping once a week, and I do my walking on the treadmill, then I go to the aerobics room and I'll do jump squats, pop squats. I'll just do a bunch of them. So you're constantly jumping, right? You're giving your bone density some impact, and in that, the research has shown that that actually helps with bone density as well. And the big thing with that too is when we think about falling and that jerk. Let's say you fall off a curb. If you've done jump training for 20 years, when you do this, you're going to be able to catch yourself faster because your instincts are better you're used to doing that kind of immediate catching. And so that is another fundamental reason why we want to make sure that we're jump training and then also lifting, because that's going to help too.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah.
And so now where do you go from here with Aeryon Wellness? What's your path?
World domination. Everybody's going to buy Aeryon Wellness. Well, right now, I mean, growing the brand, definitely, that's, as I mentioned, 600 stores across Canada. We obviously said being a global brand is one of the intentions behind this product line. We are in the States. We've had to rethink what we're doing in the States right now. So we're kind of taking a pause on that. Just waiting to see kind of what ends up rolling down the pipeline eventually. But UK, and I guess the big thing is just growing the brand and becoming the number one female supplement brand in Canada is a big goal of mine. That everybody understands the brand, knows what it is, knows it's trusted and reliable, it's third-party tested, that they can scan that QR code and learn about the product. We were featured on Dragon's Den in 2022, and I walked away with 3 offers, and that's how we walked away with 3 offers. And so in that we become the trusted brand known for the average day consumer, that Aeryon Wellness definitely has your needs covered.
Yeah. And what was that experience like going through the pitching experience? And have you pitched for investors outside of Dragon's Den as well?
So I own 100% of the company, and I don't know if I'll probably wait on that one. I've had some really incredible mentors over the years, and one of them was my old boss who sold to Jameson. And one of the things they've always told me is hold on as much as you possibly can. So I want to wait until we get to a much higher level before I start looking at bringing somebody in. And if I was able to bring somebody in who came in as a partner where I could still work in the brand, that would be what I would really like to do. But Dragon's Den was an incredible, intense experience. And I public speak quite a bit, but the thing is with that pitch, you have 2 minutes and you have to have it memorized. I'm usually using PowerPoint and I speak off the cuff. So I wanted to make sure I had everything nailed that I was able to say. It was Arlene Dickinson that agreed to my offer. And so she said yes. And then after the show, I went through the due diligence, which was interesting because they don't check out your numbers before the show, right? So they don't really know, right? And so I wanted them to come back to me and offer me exactly what, and say, all your numbers checked up. Here's, would you like to come in? So it was going to be $100,000. I believe it was for 15%, if I'm correct, back in 2022. But what I did do was take the show's episode, and I went to TD Bank, which is my bank, showed them the episode, and then I got the $100,000 line of credit instead. So I didn't have to give up anything. But it was interesting meeting Arlene. I mean, from what I've heard, and new people have gone on the show, they haven't had a chance to sit down and have conversations with her. So her and I think I had 2-3 Zoom calls. So I had an opportunity to get to talk with her. She's an impressive woman in business. I have the utmost respect for her. And looking at for myself, when I eventually walk away from Aeryon Wellness, my goal is to mentor young women in business and also do investment as well. So I was really curious about how this all kind of went through, how the process was working with that. And so that's one of the things I know eventually I'd like to be doing. I already mentor women in business through the forum, but that's something I want to continue doing and working with young women.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I think it's important. And I mean, it's one of the reasons for this podcast is to tell the stories of people who are doing it, so the people who want to get there can understand that it's possible.
Yeah. And that it's a lot of work. I mean, there are definitely, I think on a daily basis, I'm like, I should have gone into real estate. Why did I not just buy property with my money? Why did I do this? What was wrong with me? But I think that's when you have to listen to that whisper. And when I knew, when I got my money, when I got my package from Jameson, I was like, do I, if I don't do this, I'm always going to wonder what if. I will always wonder that, and no matter what, this is going to teach me so much. And I've had so many expensive lessons along the way, so many expensive lessons. But in that, doing this has been probably one of the greatest adventures. Besides, my daughter's my first greatest adventure in my life. It's definitely been one of the greatest adventures in my life.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting thing, the learning curve, that you feel like, there are the days where you're like, have I learned everything yet? And the answer is always no. There's always more to learn. And sometimes it's steep and bumpy.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we've had December was a pretty big learning curve with me. I've talked to a lot of other entrepreneurs who've had bookkeepers that weren't doing the best job, and we experienced that, and things were kind of messy, and it's taken us a long time to get through it. But in that, I came out with a very different perspective, and an amazing bookkeeper now who has had to be really, and now I'm more diligent and, more weekly meetings and really looking at the numbers and dialing things down, because where I thrive and where I shine is sales. And I love being in my stores and talking to my retailers. I don't want to sit and do Excel spreadsheets. Right. And so when I trust somebody to do that and they're not doing it. So I've learned a lot over the years. So it's just getting better and smarter and wiser.
Yeah, and figuring out what are the like 6 important things that you have to do at the end of every month to check for the integrity of the data, and those kinds of things, because financial is a huge risk for every entrepreneur.
It's a huge risk, and I think, there's a lot of conversation about, supporting women in business and how we don't get money, we don't get the funds, and it's still really challenging to get money, especially right now. I mean, it's very challenging to get money from the bank and have them give you extra, so you have to get really scrappy at times. And my word for 2025 is no. No.
Good.
No.
Love it.
Have our marketing in place? No. And I have a great fractional operations and marketing person who's a very dear friend of mine. And so she's like, no. And I'm like, no. And I'll go to her. I'm like, I have an idea. She's like, mm-hmm. And she's like, no. So that's been something I've had to land in, because I think as an entrepreneur, when you have people come to you with ideas, you want to say yes to everything. Right. So it's about really saying, okay, this is not going to move the needle in the right way.
Yeah. And in a way, it's a luxury to have many, many more things you could do than like that number of options is a blessing, but it's really hard to let go of some of them or put them in the parking lot or say not right now.
I know. And there's so many things you want, when you look at, but this could grow the brand, it can make it work and it can make it. But then I think my big thing is what I know is sticking with what I know and just repeating, rinse and repeat exactly what has worked for me up to now. And that's what I need to focus on, just because we've had such tremendous growth this past year that's been challenging when you're trying to not only launch new products. In our industry is we don't just have one product we like live on forever. We, two a year. So in that, looking at when you have growth, having to buy inventory and then create new product, it makes it almost impossible. Right. So really, really having to be scrappy. So it's that's something else. And I love launching new products. Like nothing makes me happier than launching something new. Right. And then I'm on to the next one. But I've had to be like, okay, we can focus on what we have.
Mm-hmm. And, we can love all of our children, not just the new ones.
I love all the children, I know, but the new ones are always like, look, and I'm like,
so shiny.
So shiny and new, and look at all the things it does. I'm so proud of it. So yeah, I definitely I'm learning to land a little bit more in that too. So yeah.
Well, I think that's one of the big shifts as the company grows out of startup and into scale up, is that like you have to find a landing spot where you get the traction that you need. You can't just keep switching and following all the ideas.
Looking at filling the gaps, looking at, what products aren't moving. How do we support retailers when those aren't moving? Because it's not just listing a product, it's making sure that product is turning and that they're selling it. And if they're not selling it, it's like, okay, what do I need to talk to the retailer about? Does your staff need to be educated? Do we need to do a contest in store? Do we need to put it on flyer? What are the flyer prices? Are they way too much for me to contribute to? And if that's the case, then what else can we do? So constantly getting that thinking cap, that rep or account manager thinking cap on, and being like, how can we support a store level so we can get this product moving and make sure that it gets in the hand as many of consumers as possible.
Yeah. Well, and back to world domination. I can't wait to see where you take it. So
thank you. Yeah, I'm excited. It's going to be a good year. I'm manifesting it now. It's the Leo moon, and I'm a Leo. Today's the Leo moon. So it's a big moon for me. So I'm putting it all out there, what I want.
Good. Well, we will put all the details about the brand and where people can find you in the show notes for today. And I hope that your growth path is as big and explosive as you are planning for this year.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on, Julie. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for chatting with me today.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please remember to hit subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so you won't miss any episodes. Figure Eight isn't just a podcast. It's a way of seeing the big, gorgeous goals of women entrepreneurs coming to life. If you're interested in learning more, you can find my book, Big Gorgeous Goals, on Amazon anywhere you might live. For more about my growth and leadership training programs, visit www.julieellis.ca to see how we might work together. Read my blog or sign up to get your free diagnostic. Are you ready for growth? Once again, that's www.julieellis.ca. When we work together, we all win. See you again soon for another episode of Figure Eight.